get Dennis.
It's the coolest
He-
thing, but he's like,
he
we
was-
used it once.
That was good.
Oh, it had a spool
It
too.
was
You
good,
could,
I enjoyed that.
And Dave
you
Budman,
could
did
put
you
the
know-
cable on the same machine
He's an
and
interesting
create
guy.
the
He is an
pitch
interesting
and
guy.
also
Like-
spool.
But at
Yeah.
the same time, it's going high volume there.
How are you, Tracy? It's early.
I'm always up.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm a night owl, this is tough.
This morning, it usually doesn't bother me, but it's like a 40-minute ride here.
Oh, yeah, that hurts.
So it was.
Rio, 5:30, left the house.
Wow,
Oh, that's really early.
that is early.
I was
Yeah.
up at 5:15. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
It's very dark.
It was,
Oh,
wasn't
that's
it?
normal.
But they said it was
Five,
like an hour or
five.
something before sunrise, and
I don't know
I'm
how
like, this
people
is
sleep
not
late.
happening.
Yeah, I just can't.
Well,
The dog looked at me.
I'm usually at
So
the gym
good
right
bed
now,
sore
so.
difference there.
Oh, you are an early riser. Oh my
What
goodness.
time do you go?
But I also go to
Oh, I don't
bed
go to
at
work
like
till,
9.
I live right near the office, so I don't.
No,
really
what
get
time
to-
do
That's
you
the
go to bed?
difference, yeah.
Oh.
You can't do that.
I go to the gym on the way
Probably
home. and I
quarter
go to
10,
bed.
10.
I can go as early as 9, but 10
Yeah.
o'clock's what I try to make it
Yeah.
to, just so I can get till 5.
Yeah.
I have to start putting that.
That time of
I
year,
have to
I have
start
a
figuring that out into my
fire-
regimen now.
Daylight
and
fireplace
savings
and
getting the
more
gym in.
for next year.
There's too many
Yeah,
excuses
they're
to
gonna-
me
yeah.
at night.
And then at least we get
And,
ourselves
you
on a
know,
schedule
work,
that
you know,
stays
oh, I
Yes.
can finish that. Oh, I can finish that. Oh, now it's too late.
But I'm
Now
gonna
it's
go
too late,
to
I
Or
can't
I'm
go.
hungry, it's dinner time.
Oh,
Get
yeah.
it done
This-
first thing in the morning.
This is an embarrassing
I'll
true
just
story, so I
work
was gonna
from
do the
home
morning
for a little
workouts.
bit and go in.
I went down, I laid down on my
Everyone
bed,
else
I
comes into
literally
the
fell
office.
asleep.
Being the first person there.
I said, okay, morning workouts are not for me.
Everybody's
I used to
different,
have
so
that.
it depends if you're more of a
I
morning
used to
person.
be there before everybody else, and then I was like, yeah.
Hi, Susie. How are you?
Good, how are you?
You had a full house for Thanksgiving. You had a full house for Thanksgiving. Or was that not at your
No,
place?
that was at my brother's.
Was that at Amin's?
But we had people visiting from Canada, so,
Oh.
yeah, my house was full.
You had a lot of people. The food looked good.
Everybody did something.
Charlotte doing any better?
We just found out yesterday that she's going to be doing 3 months of chemo. So yeah, we'll see. Her,
It's good.
I know. Her attitude is good, and you know, so we're, you know, put Pennsylvania Dutch stock, so we put our heads down and we move through it. So.
Right.
And she was going to come this morning, but she did not sleep well last. She did not sleep well last night, so she will not be here today.
Understandable, she's got a lot on her mind.
I'll tell her you were asking about her. Good morning.
Don't look so serious, this is fun.
Oh, it is. It's just early.
Good morning.
Is this how you, same time you do it all the time?
I don't.
No.
No. Actually, no. He's like, I'm not sure what Steve was thinking by having it this early. I flip back and forth between breakfasts and lunches, and I thought, well, we'll try breakfast this time because you get different people, and we do have a different group. We do definitely have a different group this morning. So, and there'll be about 50 live, and they'll start showing up, and maybe even running until 7:35 or so. But this will be on our YouTube channel also, so I can give you the link so you can share that with your employees if you want, or friends, and then probably within. And one of the neat things about these YouTube videos is about a week or two later they'll have been 100, 200 views on it. So it's a nice. Well, we'll put it out then to our members, so you know. If people can't come, but you know what, I can take an hour and I can watch this over lunchtime or whatever it happens to be. So. Good morning. Hey, how are you?
I had to go support a couple guys here.
I appreciate it. How are you doing?
Good.
Good to see you, man.
See?
Oh, do you know him? I'm sorry.
Of course, here we go. How are you guys?
How are you doing? I haven't seen you forever. right, we were. It must be nice, huh? Yeah,
Where are
we
you
were.
going this time?
With the siesta.
Oh, nice.
So we were, yeah, that's right. We were in Turks and Caicos, and then that's right.
You going with the kids this time or just?
And just one.
Okay.
Just so Lily's the only one I have home right now.
Okay.
So
Good for you.
yeah, so it'll be good. How about you guys?
Things are good, man. I was up at upstate New York for Thanksgiving with the family. And
Wonderful.
seeing, yeah, it was good to see everybody finally. And there's no snow. Buffalo got pounded with 6 feet, and my parents, who were 2 hours east, got nothing.
Oh, really?
Where are you?
Lake
Lake George.
Flew in and just
Oh.
hammered
Oh,
Lake
Yeah,
George.
we
Well,
got
there,
nothing,
yeah.
but Buffalo got 6 feet. I mean, well, it's just, there was 2 spots. Yeah. Natural Bridge, which is above Watertown. Okay.
Oh,
They
yeah.
got over 6 feet. Yeah. And it's just how the wind came off the lake and what the wind does
Yeah,
from
that's
there.
crazy.
One guy opened his garage, you couldn't even see out his garage.
Yeah, but there's
I don't know
just,
if you saw that
it
or
was
not.
really localized.
Exactly,
How do you even deal with that?
You don't.
You don't.
Yeah.
Just
You
take
stay in
the
your
week
house,
off.
get some beer, and
Yeah.
sit and chill
Wait
out.
for the thaw.
My word.
Good seeing you guys.
Hey, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I ski in the Finger Lakes region.
Okay.
I was hoping for snow.
Didn't get anything, huh?
No,
Ski off
2
people's houses.
inches. We got 2
Oh,
inches.
that's not enough.
It's a start.
Well, the same thing can happen though. It's really depending on the weather. Until those lakes freeze, that water's going to be.
Oh,
warmer.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
you're getting that warm, moist air, and you can get a band of snow that just gets stuck in the way the south side of the Finger Lakes is just like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can get a band of snow that'll just stick in
It
between
just gets
there.
stuck in that ridge.
Dump.
Ugh.
We'll get sometimes 20 inches of snow, and you drive over to 81 and it's 10.
Wow. No, thank you at all.
Exactly. Go south. Go
No.
south.
Nah.
We're in the Catskills and we get the same thing.
Yeah.
You drive up the mountain and it's 15 miles and it could be snowing up there and then you come down
Yeah.
and it's not snowing.
Right.
And you get these weird things. I love it. Bring the snow on.
Right. Good.
I'm thankful to live in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, a little bit
Yeah.
of everything.
Yeah, we do. And not
And not
bad
the
weather. And not
disasters.
that we don't get bad
Although we are
weather.
starting getting the tornadoes that we've never had before.
Knock
but
on wood, though.
so,
I think I put the plow on twice last year. That was it.
Yeah,
We're due.
just have the plow. No,
Yeah.
just have the
Just
plow.
have
and
it.
then
Have
put it
ready.
on and then it won't
Scared
happen.
away.
That's
right.
scared away.
Right.
That's
Because
exactly
you're
right.
prepared. If you're not prepared, it's going to snow.
That's when you get it. Yeah, last winter up there wasn't.
Even up there, you didn't get much?
We got snow, but it just ended really quickly. Normally we can ski until the end of the first week in April, and we didn't get that far this year. It ended pretty quick. We had some decent snow, but it just was over too soon. I like to go right from
I've
the
met
sand to
them,
the
but
beach.
no, really.
So he just took a position
Fall and
as the
spring are the
CEO of
best.
Liberty Ministries.
I love the in-between thing
Yeah.
where you throw a sweatshirt on.
I
still
think
be
he'll do very,
outside.
very well there. That's an interesting group.
We
of-
generally,
It's an interesting.
if we
Is
can,
it? I don't know much about it. I have another name. That's funny.
well,
They
I'll trout
they
fish
go
up
into
there. It's
about
all good
5 or 6
pretty
different
far in the May. And then
facilities in South, like Bucks, Montgomery,
So when you
Chester,
say beach, you're talking
and
Jersey or
Yeah,
just
Cape May.
Cape May.
go and be there for
Places
people,
that man lives in.
which is
That's
a
right.
huge
It
deal.
is huge.
Point Pleasant, Seaside Lakes.
And Montgomery County has not let anybody back in.
Or the Bayside, so
Really?
or
Yeah.
Windrunners and
So
stuff.
these prisoners are all stuck in there. No visitors, no connection
We bought a
with the
little place
outside
in
world.
May.
Isn't that horrible?
That is horrible.
2006,
I mean,
and
they're
my
there for a
parents were
reason,
involved
but
with
still,
press, and we like to
you wanna.
Yeah.
go take it, but it's
Wildwood's boomed, yeah, compared to what it used to be.
the whole.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We live in a little section that's basically a lot of tearing
And the
down.
problem is, even though
People
in
buy them
the
and
next
just
5 minutes we'll have
big, stupid
50 people in
We'll
here.
come walking
all
in.
down.
It looks empty
Duplex and
because it's.
everything
Well,
else.
So
they're-
big.
we're
Such a
in
big venue. That's okay. It makes you feel good.
It's 5,000 square foot lots, and they're single family homes, but they just put, a 3,000 foot home on a 5,000 foot lot.
West Virginia, maybe.
I think we have like.
Where do you live?
So you go up.
In South Jersey?
South Jersey. Oh, you got a nice drive. Yeah. You have a nice drive home. You'll be
yeah,
hitting traffic coming back. Yeah.
We'll see, yeah. Traffic is probably going to be much worse.
So right now,
Will you be able to get out of the office early today?
We do. Yeah,
Good. Okay. Good.
We'll see.
Yeah, we're,
this morning when I suggested 7:30.
so our
I was
first
kinda like,
project
what?
was an office.
That's all right.
They had fit out a lot of the warehouse for
I have another one
office space.
tomorrow morning at 7:30.
Oh, where's
I
that
was
one?
saying, you probably got a ton of these.
So it's
So
risk
they
management
bought a building
association.
across the
For
and
the
street.
RMA?
yeah, McKinney. I don't know how you.
McCund?
Oh, McCundy. Oh, that's a, oh, that's a,
It's actually.
I used to be on the board of that.
Oh yeah.
one. Yeah.
oh, my word.
The executive team out of the main
Well, this
building.
one's much easier than getting to McCundy.
That
Is that the
building
East
for
Central?
about
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yep, that's the one I used to be on the board there.
Tomorrow morning, 7:30.
Oh, awesome.
Some of my guys will be up there, I'm sure.
for more warehouse space.
Did you do any of the work?
Because we always try to get you guys in.
Yeah.
It's been numbers.
No, never got it. No. Yeah. No, no, the Poloviches, but only after they retired. We worked all around them, but yeah. Morning, Jerry. Yeah.
Great layout up there.
Yeah.
So obviously once that's
Yeah,
done.
we did that whole little.
You know, that's where I got mine.
Oh,
Big building.
not that the logo of mine.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's not.
What they were asking. I was like, oh, I was like, okay, on my desk. I found one. That's one of my friends.
Oh, wait a minute, I didn't understand that. 17,000 over what? So we gotta
I got to know
Fred Bean
PhD.
did that?
This was
Davis.
trying where they were, and they got turned down.
Davis, yeah, he had it on his calendar. On the left.
I haven't floated yet.
Well, and if he doesn't, then this is good.
Okay, so, but they'll sell you.
I have comments later.
That's good.
Always be prepared.
That's exactly right. It's the Boy Scout motto.
Because there's always the possibility that somebody on the way here this morning would not like it. So.
And when it's your show, you have to be prepared to do everything. It's dark, it's early.
Yeah, sorry, the car was started this morning.
It just took time. It wasn't really all that hard. Just trying to
The only one I wouldn't have been able to cover is Gorski. I would not have been able to do.
meet with the right people. It was
So I went
so.
down here.
Well, I see you stuck with the question, then I'll leave.
Well, why not?
And they actually.
I figured the Fed banker probably won't tell us that.
I used to sell hamsters and you really skill up basically. You know, and I would have a lot of time with it.
What a good job.
It's a little bit like what kind of stock market is going to start. It's going to get up and then it's going down.
I got the premium.
What's the difference between the three?
Something wood.
The way I have my premium, it's not really a matter of I need kind of
Joe, the founder,
maybe some
he
like
probably is not golfing.
Well, did you get the big battery?
Shoulder issues and
things like that. It's better battery range.
Okay, well, that's what I
one of
want.
the things they just had
I had
this
to buy
bit.
a Tashiro to
You
get
guys ready?
I actually,
Yeah, they went down.
I had a pretty good copy to get it. Mine.
Yeah, you gotta get, you wanna get that range.
Mine's on order.
Good morning. My name is Steve Huntsberger, and I'm the Executive Director of the Indian Valley Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to welcome you to our Fall Forum. This is a very early and crisp fall morning, so glad to have you all here this morning. It was a beautiful sunrise on the way over. Probably much to most of your chagrin that you saw the sunrise, but I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad to have our presenters here. This is also going to be posted on, it's live on YouTube right now, so we have a number of people joining us on YouTube, and this will then be part of our library, so you can share this with your networks. This forum series has quickly become a favorite of our members, and I think you'll find out why. It's been an excellent way to introduce individual business leaders to the larger chamber. I want to thank our hosts this morning, Sellersville Theater, and I want to thank our presenting sponsor, Q&B Bank. So let's give Q&B Bank a round of applause. Oh, you can do better than that. That sounded like a golf. There we go, that's better. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. So we have Scott Orzehoski with us. Scott is an Executive Vice President and Chief Lending Officer with QNB Bank. Rio Tashiro is the Senior Outreach Economist with the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. Michael Hefner. Michael is the President of Hefner Machine and Tool, and Jerry Gorski is President of Gorski Engineering. So we're pleased to bring you this discussion today. And we believe that it is a timely program. You know, we have spent the last 33 months dealing with some interesting, challenging situations. It's been exhausting, but as business people, we know we have to move forward. We have to figure out where do we find our next opportunities. And we're here today to understand where we came from and perhaps where we're going, and maybe get some hints about navigating through this new economy that we find ourselves in. So the famous author Mark Twain was credited with saying, "History does not repeat itself, but it often rhymes." And many people believe we are entering an economic reality that we really haven't seen since the 1970s or early 1980s. I was born in 1969, and I remember that it was not always easy for my parents. You know, we certainly did not live with a sense of abundance. It was more of a sense of scarcity. And this is not necessarily to be negative, but rather to embrace the sense of reality and clearly see what we might be dealing with. So, how do we navigate this new economy? And we are fortunate to have with us 4 experts who will speak on different topics around this idea of the new economy. And I think it may be helpful for us to understand what this looks like and the economic picture that we may be headed into as we begin this conversation. So I'm going to ask that we start with Ria Tashiro. And if you could give us a snapshot of where we came from, where you believe the economy might be headed, and what might be some of the headwinds that business people and anybody could be expecting to see in the next couple years.
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you very much, everyone, for having me here. Good morning. My name is Rio. I work in the research department at the Philly Fed. So this morning, I'd like to talk a little bit about where we are, where we're headed, some of the headwinds that businesses and consumers face. So I do have some slides for you to just help us understand some of the data that I'm looking at. Of course, I do have to preface my presentation with a standard Fed disclaimer that the views expressed today are mine. So next slide, please, Stan. Thank you. So the first thing I want to talk about is inflation, just because of all the things that's going on with the economy, of all the discussions that we hear about of the macroeconomics, inflation is undoubtedly the #1 most important thing. So let me actually talk about how we got here and where are we in terms of inflation. So first of all, in terms of how we got here, in terms of the mechanism of inflation, it turns out that it's a fairly simple sort of demand and supply, sort of story where we have basically a lot more dollars chasing after fewer goods and services, right? So if you look at the blue line behind me in the chart, this is the sort of the historical order backlogs, which I tend to sort of interpret as a sort of aggregate demand. So what is the overall demand level in the economy? And then on the other hand, we have the gray line, which is customer inventories, which I interpret to be the overall sort of supply in the economy. Now, if you look at the chart for the past, since the pandemic, you can really see that that blue line, the order backlogs or the demand, has actually been on a very high level. As we move out from the pandemic, and as we as consumers and businesses sort of demand more and more services, it's not really surprising that businesses are facing or have been facing a high number of order backlogs. And then on the other side, on the supply side, customer inventory. So the supply has been at really low levels, particularly in the past, let's say, 6 to 9 months ago, where we had really, really low levels of supply just because of the supply chain issues. Things are, looking better, as I will sort of show you in the next couple of slides in terms of both the demand and the supply. But you can really see that because of the gap between the demand and the supply, there's really no secret that, the price has actually been going up. Next slide, please. So as a result of that, first of all, if you look at the shape of this picture, you can really see that consumer price index inflation has been at very high levels, particularly since the beginning of last year. So I'll highlight two things. I think besides the shape of the the overall inflation, which obviously has been high for the past year or so, I would say that the components of inflation has actually changed over the last let's say 12 to 18 months, which I think is very interesting. So if you look at the first, let's say first year of inflation, 2021 to mid 2021, the dominant component of inflation has been what we call the sort of core goods, as well as more volatile items like energy and food. So in fact, if you look at the component contribution from this chart, you can see that both the green part, which is energy, as well as food, which is in red, and also the yellow part, which is core good, have been really the dominant factors in the inflation. Now, fast forward about 9 to 12 months today, the relationship between the goods and the services have actually flipped, right? So as we actually come out of the pandemic, and as we consumers demand more services rather than goods, the demand for services have actually been high right now, and so therefore we do see the component from the services being dominant over the past couple of months in terms of inflation. So that's why you see a lot of the the bigger bars in purple, different types of different shades of purple. Shelter is the biggest part, but we do see things like medical services, transportation services, and others really dominating the story about inflation. So that has really been something that we've been trying to understand more here in the Federal Reserve, and try to understand where should we be going next in terms of inflation. Next slide, please. So in order to address that, obviously, if in case you haven't noticed, we do live in a very different interest rate environment that we used to in the beginning of the year. So as you know, the Federal Reserve has been aggressively increasing interest rates since the March 2022 meeting. So compared to where we were back in the beginning of the year, right now inflation interest rate environment is very different from where we were in Q1. As a matter of fact, as we think about how do we combat inflation, one of the things that we can do, from the monetary policy standpoint, is to basically control demand by making it more difficult for businesses to borrow and spend. Therefore, we do have a much higher interest rate on average than, let's say, 9 months ago. So that really discourages businesses and consumers to borrow. That in theory is supposed to dampen the demand. So that's the blue chart, the blue line that you saw in the first slide of this presentation. So that's in theory, that's how it's supposed to work. Now, keep in mind that monetary policy can take a lot of time. Traditionally, the lag time is somewhere between 12 to 24 months. I do think that with how the markets have been reacting more quickly these days, I do think that the lag time has been reduced, but not it's not like we increase the interest rate tomorrow and then all of a sudden everything is going to be coming down in terms of prices the next day, right? That's not how it works. But the good news here is that we are starting to see some more interest rate sensitive sectors responding rather quickly to the higher interest rate environment, which gets me to the next slide. So if you look at, for example, the housing market, which I'm sure some of the other panelists will be talking about later this morning, but when you look at how the housing market has been performing, and when you look at the price changes, we are starting to see some relaxation in terms of prices. Of course, it's all about relative prices, right? So of course, when I say, prices are down, it's always, we have to think about relative to what. So prices are down relative this summer, but it is still higher than, what it was before the pandemic. So that's something that, we should keep in mind. But one of the things that I find interesting from this chart is that, if you look at the number of listings on an average day, and, of those, listings, how many of those went through a price cut, we are seeing, much higher share of houses or housing home listings that went through a price cut, which means that in response to higher interest rate environment, the sellers are slashing prices, which I'm sure you've seen in your neighborhood as well. So overall, in the U.S., about 28% of the houses are home listings are going through some kind of a price cut in the last couple of months or so. Next slide, please. And one of the last things I will talk about in terms of inflation is, this is probably the most important part in terms of the monetary policy, where we want to make sure that people's expectation about inflation remains fairly reasonable. As we all know, inflation expectation has been extremely high for the past couple of months. I do think that this picture tells us that people's expectation about inflation has been coming down. So our goal is to make our current expectation level as close as possible to that red line. So the red line is where we were back in November of 2021. As you can see right now, it's still a little bit higher, but compared to a couple of months ago, that line is actually much lower. So we are making progress in terms of what people expect in terms of inflation. Next slide, please. Just very quickly, besides inflation, we can also think about what are some of the other factors that businesses face in terms of the challenges in the coming year. So every month we actually survey a bunch of business owners around our district and ask them about a bunch of questions. And this is one of the questions that we asked back in September, which is about constraints on their businesses. So the question was, of all these issues that we have in the economy, what are some of the factors that's really limiting you from expanding? And as you can see, supply chains and labor supply issues come up fairly frequently. So let me actually address those 2 points. Next slide, please. So in terms of supply chain, I did talk about this in the first slide of my presentation, but supply chain pressures still do exist. The height of the supply chain pressure was back in December of 2021. Since then, things have actually become a little bit more relaxed since then. But again, it's all about sort of relative level. Yes, we are better than where we were back in 2021, the end of 2021. But the supply chain pressure is still there, and I think businesses still face sort of a rather large pressure in terms of that. So this is something that we should be thinking about. Next slide, please. And then, the next sort of the constraints that people had was about labor supply. So despite the fact that, we are starting to see some slowdown in the labor market, we are still in a very, very tight labor market. So if you look at the blue line, you can see that about, we had about, 11 million job openings as of the end of September. And then on the other hand, on the supply side, we have been having about 4 million people quitting their jobs every month since, mid-2021. So, in terms of both the supply and the demand for labor, we do live in a very tight labor market, and I do think that businesses sort of continue expecting this trend to continue over the next 6 months. So, if I were to pick the 2 sort of most important, constraints in the businesses today, as indicated by the surveys, it would be supply chain pressure and then labor supply, other than, of course, inflation. Next slide, please. And then related to sort of labor supply issues, of course, businesses aren't just sort of sitting around, waiting for people to, come and apply, right? So they are trying, to attract, workers by, raising wages. I do think that the issue is that, inflation is still too high. So if we actually sort of adjust the average earnings raises by inflation, you can really see that, almost all of the sectors we have here are, going through some sort of negative increase in terms of wages. So basically, whatever people have been sort of getting in terms of wages, wage raises in the past couple of years, in terms of the average number, that's still not enough to offset the higher cost of living. So again, from the monetary policy perspective, fighting inflation is the #1 cause, #1 issue, just because things like wages aren't going up as much as we would like to, just because if we adjust it by inflation, that basically gets wiped out. So I think those are the sort of the issues that we've been having. I thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions and comments.
So we can do this one of 2 ways. If anyone has any questions right now for Rio, we could just take those. Does anyone have any questions right now for Rio? Yes. And so give me the question, and I'll repeat it for the group to hear.
I'm just wondering about how set up we are for what may end up being a wage price spiral.
So the question is around possibly a wage price spiral.
Yeah, good question. So if you were to ask me that question, 3 months ago, I would have said, I would have been kind of worried. But if you look at the data today, when we have sort of the data for the past couple of months, we are really starting to see the wage growth sort of level off. So that's something that to keep in mind. Inflation numbers are starting to come down, not as quickly as we hope for, but also the wage pressure has started to come off as well. So right now I'm not too worried about it. Again, 3 months ago that was a different story, but if you look at the data today, both the inflation pace as well as the sort of increase in wage pace, both of them are starting to come down.
Rick.
Reasonably expect within the next few months in terms of the labor market? And we've had anybody I've talked to has had difficulty hiring. Short staffing seems to be virtually anywhere, and I'm wondering what your perspective might be on that.
So the question has to do really with this idea of a labor shortage. A little bit more involved with that, but where do we see that labor piece going?
So 2 things. One, I do think that the issue with labor constraint is going to continue, unfortunately, for the next 6-8 months or so. Even with the the current the slowdown in the wages as well as current slowdown in inflation. I will say that one good news is that if you look at the labor force participation number, things are actually looking a little bit better than it was 6 months ago. So, the story, a lot of the issue 6 months ago in terms of the labor market was that when you look at the labor participation rate, for whatever reason, people weren't participating in the labor market. If you look at the data now, things are looking a little bit better. So I do expect the labor force participation, particularly among the prime age group, so between 25 and 54 years of age, that number has actually been slowly coming back to the pre-pandemic level. So, I do hope that the supply of labor is going to slowly come back up again. But in terms of demand for labor, if you're a business owner, you'll be competing, with a lot of other similar companies for similar skill sets.
All right, thank you. Ria, thank you for really painting that picture of where we're at right now. I'd like to move to Scott Orzehoski. Scott is the Senior Chief Lending Officer with QNB Bank. And so let's talk a little bit about commercial banking. So banking is a relationship business. Can you tell us about what that looks like for you right now, and how does it, because as we enter this, what is a uncharted territory, at least it's been for a while, so what does that ideal relationship look to you right now, Scott?
First of all, I want to thank the Chamber and everybody for organizing this event, and also Dolene and the Sellersville Theater for hosting us. It's been fantastic, so thank you. Getting back to the relationship, that relationship has really changed a lot going from what I would call pre-pandemic. And remember, we went into the pandemic, I was meeting with my customers, and everybody was so optimistic. I'm looking at the best year I'm going to have, everything set up, I'm looking to purchase this, I'm looking to do that. Then the pandemic hits, we're now in that post sort of kind of pandemic, I don't know where we are. And then with all the economic challenges. So I see that relationship being more transformative. I think that's the best word I could use for it. We always try to do what I call consultative selling, but our customers weren't always ready for it. You couldn't have those relationships with the customer going through with some of the things. They were always chasing the top lines. They were trying to get through the different things. And now I see that as they've gone through the pandemic and things that have happened to them, they've become much more aware of their business. With the pandemic, things shut down. I think they had time to look at their businesses. They've had an opportunity to review how they do business. And most importantly, they've really come under the understanding of what cash flow is and how cash comes in and out of the business. So with that kind of light bulb going on with the customers, it's been very fortunate for us as we can have more meaningful conversations with our customers. There's many a times I met with customers in the past where, their solution to everything was more sales. And sales is not the way to bring your business out of difficult times. Smart sales, profitable sales, that's really what they have to look at. So again, with everything that they've learned and brought on from that, It's really been interesting to see how they've learned, and that relationship has grown for us. Over the last 6 to 9 months, and it's proving itself because I meet with customers, and you meet with them, and yes, Scott, I have supply chain issues. I have employment issues. Costs of everything is going up, my fuel, my materials, everything else, and they're going through all this and then finally ask, how's the bottom line? Oh, it's better than ever. So that tells me right away that the customers are smarter and working smarter, right? So they understand their business. So that's a big thing. That's tied into why is it the excess liquidity that's out there? That's been some of it. But overall, you're starting to see that pull back. But they're focused on their business, and now these conversations can be more meaningful.
So you're developing a deeper relationship with your clients. They're understanding their businesses better. What, if I may be so bold, let's go into something a little bit, probably that a lot of people have on the top of their minds. What are your expectations for and now I have a Fed banker and I have a commercial banker side by side. So what might be your expectations for interest rates going forward? And that's a big question. And you can choose to pass on that if you want.
You baited with me this before, and I said I don't know how I'd answer that. I said they're going to go up, they're going to go down, and Fed policy will have a lot to do with it.
And that's perfect.
Yeah. What we're looking at right now is, I guess, your target rate's 4, going to probably be 4.5 by the end of the year is what we're looking at. When I look at 2023, I'm going to guess you're going to be trending towards the 5s, maybe. That's my guess. Look at this, boy, he's got the poker face here. That's what we're planning on. Fed funds to go to about 5, and then maybe the next year drop to maybe 4.5. So that's how we're looking at it at this point in time, but that can change, in a moment. So.
And it's a little bit like the stock market. The stock market will go up and it will go down. Yeah. Interest rates will go up and they will go down. That's a fair statement. I appreciate that. So let me ask you another question. What keeps you up at night as a commercial banker?
I was going to say the Flyers, but as a commercial banker, what keeps me up at night is the interest rate increases for our customers. I am very concerned about, how they're going to handle that. I'm sure they're planning for it. They know what they're in for. Because the increases have come so fast, almost historically fast. So our customers haven't had time to adjust to that. So, I'm looking at customers now that, in the past with that liquidity, we have unusually low usage of our line of credit and even our home equity lines. And that has been unique to us. And we're starting to see that build up again. And now as people are dipping into those lines, which before at prime rate, up until March was 3.25%. Now you're looking at 7. If you're prime plus 1, you're looking at 8%. In $1 million line of credit, that's $30-some thousand annually. So that's a lot of money, up to 37, 35,000, so whatever. But it's significant. I see that happening also with my investment property customers. Right now rents are very high, and cash flows very nicely. Is that sustainable for the customer, for the individual that's renting the property? That's a concern that I have. And then we look at the commercial real estate side. I have customers now that are coming up on repricing for the first time, the 5 years, and you're resetting from rates from the high 3s, to the 6s. And a couple $1 million, again, that's $40,000 at a swipe of a pen that's out of your pocket annually. So those are the things that I'm concerned about, and I'm looking at, and I'm wondering, making sure the customers are aware of that. We're in constant communication with our customers, let them know, be aware of this is happening and how we're going to handle it and have those conversations. So that's the biggest thing. So that keeps me up. So international disruption is another thing that can, hit us at any time. Right now, the China situation also, could again hit our supply chain even worse. The rail strike, that could be
which not many people are talking about right now.
I know, and that's something that I'm watching because that could be a big disruptor for a lot of our customers. Obviously, the R word, if we do hit a recession, that would be big. So, those are the things I'm watching and keeping an eye on.
So you started to talk about this a little bit, but maybe you can expound upon it. How are you counseling your clients to move forward through this? because it's we're looking at the next 24 months. I mean, we have had an interesting 36 months, and we're going to have an additional interesting 36 months. What are those conversations you're having with your commercial clients to help them figure out how do they move through the next series of months and financial circumstances?
Well, thankfully, as I said, I think the customers are much smarter. They have a better understanding of their cash flows, which is critical. And if you don't, learn that, okay? And it was funny, I was talking to one of my customers almost a month ago, and he said, Scott, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at it, and right now I'm running 3 to 5 projections on my business, and I was in shock, because I can tell you, I've had people ask me for millions of dollars and won't give me one projection. But this guy was working on 3 to 5 projections with all different scenarios so that he knew he was ready for whatever might happen. And that was very impressive to me. And in talking to other customers, I see them doing that as well and watching their cash needs. So run those projections, have those things in mind, be prepared. That's really the thing that's going to be the most important. And then, stay efficient and stay on top of your business. Follow the dollars through your company. That's the most important thing. That's where it is. Don't chase the top line. A sale isn't a sale till you get paid. Remember that one? Basic stuff, but I mean, you forget that. Don't celebrate when you make the sale, celebrate when you get paid. So those are the things I look at.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Scott right now? Okay, we'll circle back to these questions, to these presenters. I'm also very pleased to have Michael Hefner with us. Michael is the president of Hefner Machine and Tool, and they have really a fascinating business, and you've spent a number of years building this business. And so, as an owner casting a vision for your business, you've experienced some significant changes over the last. We talked about the different projections, but over the last 36 months. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your company is experiencing from a development perspective and how you're planning to move into 2023?
Thank you for having me. This is the first time I'm doing this, so I may jump around a little bit here. But so basically what we're looking at now, I've been doing this my whole life. We've been growing every year. We buy machines, we replace machines. This has been, since the pandemic hit, has been the first time we've really been sitting back saying, restructure, build around you, more QC, kind of build up our quality control and stuff. So we've been more in a, more satisfy the customers, take care of who we have. We haven't been looking for new customers. We've been more just taking care of who we can take care of. Employee-wise, we haven't been hiring, to be honest with you. We've been paying our employees more to take care of what we need to do, giving them the overtime if they want the overtime, giving them more benefits, things like that. So I found the people that are out there right now are not the people you're looking for. You want the people that want to work, and right now we're finally starting to see that change a little bit. But as far as employees-wise go and stuff, what I say is take care of the people you have, and train, internal training. We're a job shop, so we do industries, medical, military. We're all over the map. Sometimes we don't even know what the parts are going for that we make. We'll do aluminum, titanium, stainless. We purchase the material, we machine it, we send it out to get it plated, we paint it. There's so many outside services we have to use to do something. So we see all different sides of employee problems across the board on that kind of field. And that's what I've found from most of the people I'm dealing with now is they're taking care of who they have. The backlogs are big, but you take care of the customers that pay you. So if you take care of vendors, they take care of you. So we've been doing everything we can to make sure we pay within 15 days. We go to the qualified vendors that are going to give you answers in the proper time, and keep your customers notified when you do run into the problems. There's been a lot of times here, we used to platers, painters, we'd get turned around in a week or two. Now they're up to 4 weeks. Our lead times for every job we do a lot of high-end plating stuff that gets nickel, gold. Sometimes they're out of the shop for a month and a half, and then they come back. So from the time we buy material, machine it, get all the finishing. They come back, we get helicoils, all the things that go in, because we supply the finished product to the customer. Could be 3-4 months now compared to what we used to do in 2 months. And it's more outside services than it is for us, because we've gotten more streamlined with machines, pallet systems. We do small quantity, but we also can do the high volume. A lot of times we end up getting that after we do the prototypes. The jobs stay with us. So we have grown our company that way to that side. But majority of our problem is for lead times is outside services, and the costs have all been through the roof.
So it's really for you this communication piece, not only with your employees and taking care of your employees, and I think you have a little bit of a unique piece here too, in that there's not as many tradespeople to choose from, right? So that's probably a concern. So you keep the people that you have, you treat them well, you treat your vendors well, your vendors treat you well, and it's kind of a virtuous cycle, right? Everybody's taking care of everybody. But that being said, lead times on a lot of these projects really do come into play.
Yeah. Most of the customers know that too, and they've seen it happening. And a lot of the customers we do work for also deal with other companies. So you can see, what I'd like to pride ourselves on is customer service. We take care of our customers. We let them know when things are going wrong. There's other companies out there that don't do that. So we're up front with our customers. We let them know what's going on. We keep them step by step. If a lot of and it's not the vendor's fault per se. It's some of the chemicals for plating come from China that you can't get, or there's longer lead times for everything that you're getting right now. So it's not them just saying they're not going to do it, or they don't have the employees even. It's the chemicals and the equipment you need to be able to do this stuff. If you have a machine down right now and you're looking for a motor or something like that, sometimes you could be down for a month just because you can't get the equipment you need to fix the equipment that's making the stuff. So that's been a lot of the stuff we've been finding right now. Is it's not really the industry, the employees, and companies wanting to grow. It's just everything at the same time is hitting us, and it's just slowed everything down to where we're at now.
And communication has become a major part of how you correct or at least satisfy the relationships.
Yep. Keeping them up front, letting them know way in advance so they can plan, because a lot of our customers take our product and it goes into another product. So if they're planning on building a unit and we don't supply it when we do, sorry. If we don't supply it when we're supposed to, well, then they're down on their line. So if we let them know in advance, they can say, all right, well, we're going to build this month, because Hefner's parts aren't coming in and we're missing that part. And a lot of times it's not our part, it's a cable from somewhere or a chip, things like that. So we work with the customer to find out when they need it, and we try to keep our times.
Good. So as you think about your industry, your segment, what has, so as you talk to your colleagues, as your trade groups, what does your industry, what are you projecting for 2023 and going forward? Or maybe just even you personally?
Well, right now, with customer base-wise, from what we're hearing, it's pretty much status quo. We're not hearing any kind of growth that's making me feel happy. We have picked up some new customers in the past couple of months that we're hoping is going to turn into something, but new customers take time in manufacturing. You have to prove yourself, do the first couple jobs, and get in before you can really start getting new work. So right now, prototype work, new stuff is very non-existent. I think most of our customers are all doing their product lines, keeping status quo. I've heard some layoffs coming down. We do some work for bigger Cobham, Northrop Grumman, things like that, where we hear some feedback from them that things are coming down. But all in all, I see ourselves being about the same as we were this year. I don't see a lot of drop off, but I don't see a whole lot of growth.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Nope. Yep. Be very happy if we could just stay where we're at.
So I think you started to, or maybe you really have been talking about this the whole time, but as change happens and accelerates, what challenges and opportunities do you see going forward, particularly for your business and maybe even the industry, so both the industry and your business?
Change meaning like for the machinery? Or?
Yeah, and it could be a variety of things. So yeah, so what are the challenges and opportunities that you see out there? But that's a big part of it.
Machinery is the big thing, automation. We're trying to go that route, but with our type of business, it's small quantity. So you need the guys, you need qualified guys. So our big thing is we've been trying to do training programs, bringing people in, giving them a 4-year training program to get up to that level, because when you're doing small quantity, we're setting machines up 3-4 times a day. Some people buy the same machines we buy, set them up, and they run for months at a time. We don't do that. Our guys are setting machines up 3-4 times a day. So we do not have the luxury of sitting there saying, oh, we could just get anybody to come in here and run a machine. We need qualified people that know how to do it. And from my experience, from what I found, I would rather take somebody in and train them ourselves than what happens coming in.
So that's an interesting comment, Michael. I have been seeing more and more businesses. We think about people coming out of school or training centers ready to go. But I'm hearing more and more of our members are actually saying, you know what, these are specific. There are specific qualifications that we need, and we want to do the training ourselves. Is this a new phenomenon for you, or has this always been part of?
Tech schools are great. I mean, if you give me a tech schools kid that came in, just what they learned through that gives them the basics. It gives them, but it's not what you run into on a day-to-day problem. I mean, when you're setting machines up like what we do, every job's a new job. You could be cutting plastic one day, you could be cutting stainless the next day. It's about feeds and speeds. It's about listening to tools, understanding pressures and things, and what's going on, plating buildup, things that happen. So you have to do it. I say it's just like going to college. If you worked in a machine shop for 4 years, you went to college, because if you at my place, because we will give you an experience and an education as you're getting it and showing you what you're getting on the thing. So if you can do that and you work for you're worth something. That's an education you just got there, because you know more than anybody would walking off the street. So it's something that's valuable, and you find me anybody that's got a 4-year working in a machine shop, I want to talk to you. I want to see if what you know.
That's awesome. Yep. That's awesome. Thank you. Yep. Thanks for sharing with us. And Jerry, you bring an interesting perspective to this group today. So you are president and CEO of an engineering firm, but you also have your finger on the heartbeat of the real estate market, particularly commercial real estate. So I want you to talk about that a little bit this morning. And we have experienced a lot of societal change compressed into the last number of months, mostly due to the pandemic, but it's translating to significant economic change too, right? So we heard about that from our bankers. Can you tell us a little bit about the impact that you see on the real estate market? And I'm thinking particularly this area, but expand it as you see fit.
Sure, no pressure. Scott said that his clients are smarter now, and I'm supposed to bring an interesting perspective, but no pressure. Good morning, everybody. So what this great disruption that we're living through, and we're not through it yet, what does it mean for real estate? And I think the industrial side is the easiest one for us to see. We were talking a little bit this morning, this area was not really a driver for distribution, and now it is. We see these large, 200,000+ square foot buildings go up just to warehouse stuff that we need tomorrow. And it's a real phenomenon throughout the Northeast, but also across the country where interstates come together. We've taken industrial land and we've gobbled it up to build warehouse space that was really driven by investors primarily. People who want to own a portion of that building and rent it out to somebody that's going to run distribution out of there. And the interest rates have really changed that whole model. But we watched, just right around here, we watched industrial land move from somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 per acre of industrial land to now close to $30 a square foot of building that fits on that land. So that's more than a 100% increase in value of real estate, but it's also a change in how we measure the value. It's no longer price per acre. It's price per square foot of industrial building. So it really has changed the market, and you know how sustainable all these distribution buildings are remains to be seen. I personally feel that we've overbuilt without a real knowledge about how distribution works. Amazon, the leader of this phenomenon, has 50 projects across the country. Some are done, finished, and they're trying to sublet them. Some they've simply pulled the plug during the approval process. So even that giant is not expert on distribution and where those buildings need to be. There's a building on Germantown Pike near a Walmart in, I guess it's East Norriton. I think it's East Norriton, this side of 202. The Amazon did finished, no trucks leaving that building. So, you know, right here, they're still learning how that works. But we've taken an awful lot of industrial land off the market. Residentially, same, we're seeing projects sell for so much a unit. Whether it's an apartment building, townhouse project, developers are buying projects that are somewhat approved and they have a feeling for the value. That whole, you know, taking down a farm or something for so many dollars an acre has really changed, and the market has matured a bit and rather quickly. And the values pre-pandemic over in Trapboro, there was a project we were involved in that was small lot, single, residential. Those units were worth $55,000 per lot. And recently, a similar project sold for $130,000 per unit. So more than double. And we heard about inflation, construction costs too, to build those buildings significantly up over the pandemic. So without a graph, I can tell you that around here, in 2 years, the cost to build an industrial building is up 30% in 2 years. That just is, I hate to use this word, unprecedented, but it's unprecedented. We haven't seen that. On the positive side, for our area, values have, you know, one of the things that commercial lenders, developers struggle with is that the value of that building is always a historic factor. What that building is worth is based on what the building similar to it in the same area sold for. So we're always looking backward to try to do something that's going forward. And throughout my career, it's been a struggle because if we do have any type of inflation or code changes that drive the cost of building a building, which I don't want to forget about, if we have those things going on, we're still looking backward to try to set the value, what's the appraised value of that building that isn't built yet. This is the first time that I've seen the value of those buildings, existing buildings that are trading, actually go up almost as quickly as costs have gone up. So the lack of supply compared to demand across the board, residentially, commercial, industrial construction, it's finally kind of matched. And the appraisal value has gone up really quickly. So buildings can still get built. We heard a little bit about interest rates, but there's still money to lend, right, bankers? So that's a positive thing. And, you know, for our area, the fact that we have great school districts really drives so much of our value. Where do people want to live? Where is there a quality of life? Where does the workforce come from that we all need? A lot of that's driven by our school districts. And if we just think of Montgomery County and we think about where the challenges are, it's Norristown and Pottstown, right? Those two areas are struggling from a value point of view, from a demand point of view, from a home ownership point of view. And I think that, you know, we should be encouraged to say across Bucks County, Montgomery County, our whole surrounds, we don't face those challenges everywhere because our school districts are strong. That's where businesses want to be. That's where the workforce comes from. And that's going to continue to drive the real estate economics here. As far as buildings going forward, codes change, right? So what is one of the positive things coming out of code changes? Energy efficiency. So when we look at how buildings perform, it didn't used to be a high driver in a client's concern. People don't buy a home because they know it has very efficient air conditioning or lighting or, you know, how it performs they want to be in a neighborhood or whatever their selection criteria is. And that's starting to change. People are starting to look at what the operating cost is, and the code is also forcing a lot of that. The code is requiring that we essentially model each building now and predict its energy performance, and I think that will continue. I think people are going to look at real drivers of operational costs and also storm resiliency, right? We've all been through not just the pandemic and all the challenges that come with that, but you know, here, August 4th of 2020 and September 1st of 2021, we had 2 rainfalls that exceeded anything the area has seen since recording rainfall history and flooding history. And, you know, how did roads, buildings perform during that flood, and how can we make them more resilient? These are things that people are thinking about, and emergency systems in those buildings.
So you started to talk a little bit about, you started your conversation with all this warehouse space that's being thrown up. How, and maybe specifically locally, so what does it look like from a land use perspective when we have all of these large warehouses going up when it could be, so it's still commercial, but when it's not a productive use, or it could be going to multifamily or residential? What does that look like? What is the impact on the community?
So the first thing we think about is demand is very dynamic. What does the real estate market need? What do we as humans need? And that changes. Our land use is very static. The counties help each of our communities. The ultimate power in deciding what projects move ahead is most important local, but the county planning commissions help the local government adopt land uses and set zoning and set land development rules. And that, that is done by elected officials, and it's a political effort, so it's not very dynamic. So if you look at, when we go into a community and somebody wants to build a project, we first look at the zoning, what's allowed to go there. So these warehouses have taken up a lot of the land that was zoned for industrial use. And companies like Michael, he talked about what he's doing for his employees that run the machine shop. And what we've any of us that are in business know that we need to do to keep our employees, especially coming through what we just lived through in the past 33 months. That warehouse doesn't provide the same level of employment. It can be more transitional. It's not that, the buildings might be needed, the jobs might be needed, but the real career type jobs come from companies like Michael's. But if we just put a big warehouse there, we're not going to build a machine shop there. So how do we look at what can go there? And on the housing demand, as I said, the school districts are driving the residential market, and what does that modern house look like? Home ownership is down historically a little, not a lot. We're still in the 60s as a nation. We know in our communities that's really important. Home ownership versus transitional rental units, the real key to that community is the people that are there long-term, make it home, get involved, volunteer, do all the things that, really make community. So are we taking residential land off the market because rentals are up, residential rentals are up? Are we taking entrepreneurial industrial land off the market because rental warehouses are up? Yes, and yes. And, are our local planning commissions aware of this, and how can we be a little bit more dynamic to meet the demand going forward versus that, what did we need 10 years ago?
So we don't necessarily know what the impact is. It could be positive or it could be negative.
Well, I think that the real question on the industrial side is, did we learn through this pandemic that we need to make more things in this nation? Let's just talk about the CHIPS, right? So the CHIPS Act passed. Our federal government believes that we need to make more little brains here, right? And because most of them were being made in Asia, and we learned that all the supply chain disruption, Ford could not make an F-150. They were trying to sell it without the technology that you would take delivery. I don't know if you remember this. And then when all the technology came in, they'd put it in your vehicle and you'd have your F-150. It was a great story for me because, like Michael's company, we manufacture buildings and we hit the same thing. We just can't deliver buildings as rapidly as we used to. And, to set clients' demand, expectation, to set clients' expectation before it got to, why isn't that building done? We would say, look, if Ford can't deliver an F-150, we may hit a snag. Your air conditioning units may not be ready. Well, we need them. But we are getting buildings finished. Anyway, I think the real issue is how we move forward as a society. Do we want to make things here? We can make things here cost effectively. Technology is a huge driver to how we do that. But, the world manufactures. We can manufacture here. One of the interesting things to think about is that both Bucks and Montgomery County, approximately 10% of the overall employment comes from manufacturing. And Montgomery County has the most manufacturing jobs in the whole state by county. So it is a big driver. I think it's a big benefit to our area that we have just this diverse skill set, everything from warehouse to machinists to construction trades. How do we use it? How do we leverage technology? How do we use that to drive our economic engine? Because we need that balance. We can't be a bedroom community. We can't be only known for our schools. We can't only be known for healthcare. We need that diversity. It served us well so far. I think it serves us well coming out of this.
So one of the things that we always talk about in business is nothing happens until something is sold. And oftentimes that thing that's sold is something that's created. So we have to, I think you're right. I think we've learned that we have to create things here. And that's a major component of who we are. So we are coming to our end. And I think one of the things I learned here is that there's a lot of moving parts, but it is incredible how all interrelated they are, and they do really build upon and influence each other. I would open this time up the next few minutes for any questions that we might be able to entertain from the audience. Al, I think I saw your hand first, and I have two more here.
Yeah. Good morning. Glad to have a Fed economist here. I would like to talk about the national debt a little bit and what influence that might have on interest rates and taxation, and of course that all impacts the way we spend money and the consumer market and all that. I got the impression from the presentation you made that this inflation is being driven by demand and lack of supply. But what about money supply? When you were born and I entered the professional labor market, Steve, the national debt was about $350 billion. today the national debt is $31 trillion. Is that 100 times or 10 times? I don't know, but it was about 34% of the GDP, and now it's 123% of the GDP. So doesn't that set a limit on interest rates in the future in terms of financing that debt? Or it doesn't matter because we can print all the money we want, but that doesn't impact inflation.
So for the people that are listening at home, the question really revolves around interest rates and debt and the percentage of debt that we're seeing right now. So Rio, I'll let you take it.
Yeah, so the increase in national debt, I do think it's an interesting and also very important long-term issue. And yes, down the road, it is going to be a problem. In terms of how it's calculated into both interest rate calculation as well as inflation, the way it is calculated right now, actually, national debt is actually outside of the realm of that, right? So what we consider in terms of inflation calculation is what businesses are paying for things and what consumers are paying out of pocket. So things like investment value as well as debt, the value of the debt actually don't get into the calculation of that. So for right now, it doesn't actually influence, at least directly, the inflation calculation.
There was one more question right in front of Al. Yeah. Yes. Go ahead.
I was really encouraged to see from the whole panel here, especially with Scott, Michael, and Jerry, how each of your businesses that you're working with or helping, how in this constricted market, you're, like with Michael, you're improving culture, working on culture, the vendors. That is awesome. The efficiencies in the homes, and then with Scott, the projections of and watching cash flows. So I'm guessing this happens with businesses as things tighten up. They're like, oh crap, what do I do to manage right now? I'm curious, what's the feedback you're getting, especially on the culture piece? How's the team perceiving that? Wow, this is a great company. And also, when things get better, will the companies continue to do those things they're doing right now? Or will they say, oh great, money's coming in, we don't have to worry about those things?
Boy, I should have you had the microphone there. I'm not sure I can encapsulate it for the people listening at home. But it's really talking, the question revolves around culture, as we are moving into more difficult situations, we really are much more focused on creating an efficient business, creating a culture where everyone is on the same team moving forward. So I'm going to let you guys answer that.
One thing I would say about the employees and the vendors and all that stuff is the culture is, I think everybody's embraced it to the sense of saying everybody's living within their means, everybody's enjoying vacations, everybody's taking time off. With the lead times, with everything we've had, it's the mindset now. I think we've all come through this past year that I don't think there's probably anybody in this room that hasn't taken a vacation or two, and it's across the board. Everybody's taking smaller ones, different ones, but everybody is just taking time and living within their means and doing what they want to do. And I think I haven't seen yet the push or anything to push us to go farther than what we are. I think most of the vendors I've talked to, they've structured themselves, they're ready to go. Everyone I've talked to that said, if demand starts pushing us, back to the demand side too, like a year ago, we would have material. We'd be searching all over the U.S. for it. We couldn't find material. The demand was just out of everybody was hoarding. There was all this stuff going on. Materials come way down now. We're back to where we were when the pandemic started. So that tells me demand's not there. So right now, everybody's in a wait and see mode in my industry right now. And we're busy, but we're comfortable. But everyone I know has built up, platers, painters, they're ready to go. And when the time comes, I think we'll be ready to go.
So in our case, we did grow in people count over the last 33 months. The beginning, when the government shut down and all of our businesses shut down, was extremely difficult, but that creates opportunity. The smaller companies in construction can't continue. Unfortunately, 3 to 4 person operation just simply couldn't do the paperwork to get the PPP loan or whatever the next steps were. And now it's insurance, benefits. The smaller companies can't provide it. So we've been able to hire, fortunately. We now have a full-time recruiter HR director. That's paid off tremendously with culture, to be able to talk to people, whether they're long-term employees or new hires. How's it going? What are we doing? It's important. And I think that, one of the interesting things, neither of our businesses could work completely from home or anything like that. And being able to get through this, meet the challenges, the requirements of working safely, and it does bring people together. So I think we have a tighter team. We certainly have way better benefits. We have counseling. Things that, 2019 was full speed ahead. And to Scott's point, the construction industry was so busy, and it was just a matter of just getting things done. And now, whether it's culture or attention to detail in the business, it is a much tighter group on both aspects.
Yeah, and addressing, what we learned from our mistakes, or, where we are now, and retain this. I harken back, I'm old enough now to remember my grandparents talking about the Depression, and they had a lot of that. It was an impressionable, thing of how they looked at things, how they hoarded some things and everything else, for lack of a better word. But, now I see these customers, it's going to be the same thing. I don't think they're going to forget the lessons they learned. The interesting thing is going to be, is that next generation going to understand it or take it as seriously as these people did as they've gone through it. But I do think we're looking at a new way of people analyzing and looking at their businesses.
There's the saying that good economic times create weak people, and bad economic times create strong people. So, I think we've lived through that. There was another question over here, Ryan.
Ria, did any of your slides address the hospitality industry? You're seeing a lot of restaurants closing. You're seeing a lot of restaurants open. You're seeing a new way of living where the brewery's scene, the distillery's scene, the big shopping plazas with restaurants and open air concept. They can't get food. They can't get employees. So why are we opening more when more are closing? Does that make sense?
The question revolves around the hospitality, where we have a number of restaurants closing, but we have new ones and breweries and vineyards opening up, and the question also revolves around the pricings for food and lack of employees.
So that has to do with people are demanding more of these services, right? So precisely because some of these places had to unfortunately shut down during the pandemic, we as consumers are demanding more of these services, and we want to go to bars, we want to go to restaurants, we want to go to breweries, and so part of the reasons why we see these new places opening up was to satiate the demand. On the other side, if you look at where the labor demand is happening, leisure and hospitality is actually the number one, both in terms of growth and also in terms of demand. So, it may not feel it that way, but if you look at the data, clearly both the demand and supply is there. We may actually have to wait and see a little bit more because the data seem to be lagging a little bit. When I look at the data, both the demand and supply in terms of leisure and hospitality are regaining fairly healthily.
And I just want to make a comment. I think that industry was hit the hardest and treated the most unfair through most of this. The PPP situation didn't help them. Their stimulus came much later, probably 8 months too late. So a lot of them did struggle. And so congratulations to all the companies out there that had to go through that and survive, because you went through a lot. And I tip my hats to you. Because, again, I don't think we reacted quick enough for that industry.
I think we have time for one more question. Anyone? Well, yeah, go ahead.
In Bucks County, they've been talking a lot about the affordability index, particularly of housing, and saying, trying to hire people who can't afford to live here in Bucks County. Have anybody talked to that or experienced that issue, either with trying to find new employees that can't live, or you can't hire somebody because they don't want to travel 40 minutes from where they live because of price of gas and housing and things like that? Have any of you experienced any of those issues?
This question revolves around really the affordability of housing and proximity to work. So, Jerry, I don't know if that's something you want to tackle.
Well, I would say in the construction side, we have watched significant, not just material price increases, but wage increases. So we're way different than where we were relative to other industries, I think. One of the things that we dealt with, I use this example a lot, somebody could get a starting job at Target now, working air conditioning. We have to be at a higher wage point. We're not running into a lot of that, but I do like to always think in extremes, right? So when we go, I'm a skier, we go out west skiing, that's always an issue. Where do the people that work at a ski slope live, because real estate is so expensive around Breckenridge in Colorado or Jackson in Wyoming? And workers, Wyoming's a good example. They come from Idaho, and they come in every morning to work at the ski slope, almost an hour commute. Hopefully the pass is open, right? We're not seeing that so much in my industry. I don't know if you're seeing it, Michael?
No.
I think that just the increase in wages has driven that. My concern is more people living in apartments than homes. That's, more people renting than owning. The numbers aren't staggering yet, but I see that as a potential trend. As interest rates go up, mortgage cost goes up, the percentage, and maybe the bankers could speak to this, the percentage that's allowed for housing is really starting to push the limit, possibly over 30 right now, which is scary. And I see that as a bigger concern. I think we have to watch it in our communities and understand what's the right number of apartments, what's the right number of owner-occupied homes. This area is not extreme. There are other areas with higher, worse affordability indexes in this general area than Bucks or Montgomery.
Thank you. This was a fascinating conversation this morning, and I want to thank our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause. And Dave, I'm going to invite you, Dave Freeman, I'm going to invite you to come up here and close us out. My good friend Doug Clemens, who's the CEO of Clemens Food Group, and Scott and I were talking about this morning. We have one of Doug's favorite phrases is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I hate it. I think about it every single day, but it has served me well. I think this conversation this morning, we're starting to learn a little bit about that. I want to thank. We have Dave Freeman, President and CEO of Q&B Bank. I want to thank you for sponsoring this group this morning. This was fascinating. This will be up on our YouTube channel. Dave, would you like to have a few closing comments for us?
Well, it's really enjoyable being here today with friends. We've got Jerry and Mike and Scott and Rio. I've seen him a number of times at the Federal Reserve Updates. Actually, I'm meeting with Joe Budash this afternoon to talk about what's going on in the local economy. Great panel. Thanks for everybody for coming. We love getting involved in these types of opportunities. It's been a crazy 3 years, probably going to be another crazy 3 years. Every time we think, oh, this year's going to be normal. We were kind of feeling, as Scott said, right before the coronavirus, interest rates were getting kind of in a normal, this kind of yield curve, which is where banks make the most money. Looking at our net interest margin being right where we wanted to be, everything was just floating along very nice, and boom, coronavirus hit, and we've all had to adjust to that. So congratulations to everybody in the room and all the panelists for working through all this. And Rio, I'm sure you're getting beat up all the time at the Fed for whatever decisions you guys make too. So thanks a lot for coming out today, and thanks for having us today. Thanks.
All right, I have two housekeeping announcements, and then we can go down. So as we get to the end of the year, we start thinking about what is ending and what is beginning, starting new. So after over 25 years, Terry Little has decided to retire. So Terry is retiring at the end of January. I'm not sure how many times we're going to be together again as a group, but I wanted to let you know. Terry has spent a wonderful 25 years here. I think you built our first database, and I think you started when we shared one computer in the office. So she's been around for a while. She has helped create a great community of business leaders that you are all a part of, and want to thank her very much for her time. So you'll see her for a few more weeks. But I'm also happy to announce that on Monday, Michelle Bono joined us, and will be certainly not taking over for Terry. But will hopefully be working with us for many, many years. I think many of you probably know Michelle, and we are really excited about working with her. Chris Stanley has agreed to stay with me for a few more years yet, so we have Chris. So I want to thank you all for joining us this morning. This is a great group of people. I know many of you are going to be joining us down at the Washington House for some breakfast and networking. We can head on down there now. Again, a great thanks to Rio and Scott and Michael and Jerry. This was a great program this morning. I appreciate your expertise. I appreciate you getting up literally at the crack of dawn this morning, and I appreciate all of you. We have a great Chamber of Commerce here. We have a great community of business leaders, and you guys keep moving and driving this community forward. So thanks for all you do. Have a great day, and we'll see you.